Welcome to Get Your House in Order, where the Medici brothers, investors and entrepreneurs Chris Auditore and Dr. Philip Zimmermann discuss timeless principles of success, significance and legacy. A podcast for business owners who want to design a beautiful life and a beautiful business. Sponsored by the one and only exclusive Medici community.
Welcome back to Get Your House in Order. Today we're going to talk about a subject that I hated. Long time in my life, I really hated this subject. That's part of my story, and we can get into that as well today. But it's the billionaire's secret, the power of devouring books. Chris, you kind of mentioned when we said, let's talk a little bit about books. You said it's the billionaire's secret. Why the billionaire's secret?
A couple of years ago, I was invited to a billionaire's friend's house, which was quite the experience. If you've ever been hanging out with a billionaire, there's a different category between a millionaire and a billionaire. So this, you have to picture a gated area. There were security cameras. There were guards. That you had to, be checked at the entrance. I mean, this was quite the castle that I was visiting, and I call him a friend because we have been friends for some time now. And I got invited to spend some time at his home, meet his family. And I took a tour of the property. This was an incredible property. Rooms. I can't even tell you all the art collection, the decoration. It was just a very stunning place to visit, and something that I cherish. But anyhow. After taking the tour of the whole house, the whole property, including, a huge swimming pool area, playgrounds for the kids or grandkids, he took me into his, into what he called his favorite room of the house. And it was his library. And so, in fact, if I think of his library now, it's kind of my dream scenario. I don't have that set up quite the way I have. I'm reading too many Kindle books, so that's the problem with the modern technology. You can't put it into a library. But he took me into his favorite room, which was his library, and literally he had built a library kind of on various levels, almost like a public library where you put the book stand and you put the ladder and you can climb up, and then showed me his book collections. He was a big book collector also of some old manuscripts. But then we sat down in his library. He had these very comfortable chairs. Actually, a few different ones, kind of different reading positions, if you want to say it like that. And then I think we sat about 4 hours in his library, and we talked about books. And I have this incredible passion for books. Philip, you and I, we share that. That we just love reading. We love part of our self-development is really to what are you reading, what are you learning, what are you growing. I'm always asking people all these questions, but it was incredible for me to see that this billionaire that he also had such a passion around books. And one of the topics was leadership, and I've read leadership books for 15 years. Basically, every year I went through a lot of leadership books, and so we had a lot to talk about. And literally, I think we spent almost 4 hours talking about the lessons we're learning from books, our favorite books. He kind of pulled different books out of his shelf, and I walked away from that meeting with a list of book recommendations. And so that's why I call it the billionaire's secret, because he literally said that he accredits his success or some of his success in great part to him being a student all of his life. And so that's why I call it the billionaire's secret.
Yeah, it's and the beautiful thing is that what I realize when I'm reading a book, you can get a lifetime of experience, a lifetime of wisdom and knowledge, for $10. So
That's right.
it's not just
You
a
don't need a
billion.
billion. You don't need a billion.
You don't need to be the billionaire to actually take advantage of this principle. So there are some things which are nice in life where you feel like, oh, that costs a lot of money, but I mean, there was a reason why a lot of the first generation of billionaires actually, the great industrialists, Carnegie and all in the States, what they used their money for was actually creating public libraries to give this gift of knowledge to the world and to everyone. And we are living now in a time where we have access. We now have access to more knowledge on our iPhone than Bill Clinton had during his presidencies, which is just mind-boggling for if you think about this. And still, most people don't even read 2 or 3 books a year. It's unbelievable how we have access to more knowledge and actually have a key to a life that only was in history for the elite and the monks reserved.
Yes, and oftentimes when I talk with people about reading books, there's this great excuse, oh, I don't have time. Chris, where do you put all the time to read all these books? Because I've been on this on the schedule of reading a minimum of 52 books per year, which is 1 book per week. And a lot of people look at me shocked when I tell them that, and I'm like, what else do you do? I mean, if because I mean, first of all, it doesn't take that long to read a book. Now we've got Audible, we can put it even on our ears, and we can also Audible books count as books. But it's fascinating. That's why
do summaries count?
No, summaries do not count. But that's why calling it the billionaire secret is one of the things that I also took away kind of as a confirmation from visiting my friend is that he had made the time in order to read. So it wasn't kind of at the end of his career that now he's got the billions on his bank account. Now he can sit all day and kind of do some reading. But he would actually say it was part of his wealth creation was that he was a student and devouring books. So for me, time, I have no time to read, for me is absolutely no excuse. I get so frustrated with people. If you don't look at the statistics, how much people watch TV, how much movie time they get into a year, I'm like, well, the first thing I would do is just cut out all these bloody movies. Get rid of your TV, throw it out of the window, and start buying some books, because I have zero tolerance for people who don't tell me they don't have time to read books.
Well, I remember I started saying that I kind of hated the subject or hated books, and the reason behind it is that when I was in grade 3, I really people picked up. Before that, it's kind of a lot of play and it's a lot of fun in kindergarten and school. So I did well there, but then it started kind of to be some work. And people realize that I'm just not very good at it, and I was struggling, and so my teacher talked to my mom that they should take me to kind of a doctor, therapist, kind of making sure what's wrong with me. And they found out I am dyslexic, so I had problems with reading and writing. From a very early on, I was kind of terrified of needing to read in front of the class. Having to spell something on the board in the front. I remember how I would be covering myself under the blanket, not wanting to go to school because I was so afraid of that, and that made myself kind of books were for me not just something I didn't like. It was something that was in the category of disappointment, of fear, of anxiety. Well, they spend a lot of money, our parents, on sending me to one of the best psychologists in treating kind of and helping people when it comes to the area of dyslexia, which was not as much about making me learn how to read and write, but actually building up my self-confidence, because that's what most of the problem is, that it's kind of this iceberg. You only see the top, but the big problem is underneath. And so the big problem for people who struggle with dyslexia, where especially when it was diagnosed late, there's a lot of underneath self-confidence problems. So we would play games, and there were, in a group, and there was winner number 1, and there was winner number 2, and there was winner number 3. And so I remember, and normally
You always come out as a winner.
I make a lot of fun of school systems, like that. But for me at that point,
it helped.
It was amazing that I could come home and say, hey, today I was winner number 3, out of 3. And I was just, good that I didn't tell you about it, but my parents, because my parents was great. You would have said out of 3, But they build up a self-confidence, and then out of that I started to kind of read, and realized late on, with 17, I think I read my first book back to back, because I cheated my way through school, kind of not reading the whole book. But I realized all of a sudden there's a whole world that opened up, that I didn't know about. That is possible to kind of experience when you start reading books. Now, I have to say that I'm also have observed in myself that there's the tendency, if you love books, that you can just read them to read them. To just, you have 52 is maybe your goal, and then after 50, you just want to get through the book rather than really applying and learning what the book is wanting to teach you in that moment. Let's talk a little bit about how do we actually apply what we are learning from books, because I think that is one of the keys where a lot of us struggle, even in the time of knowledge. Knowledge is not power anymore. Implementation of the knowledge that we have with the right focus is power, but that's where it really takes also even more intentionality and focus. So how do you make sure that and what are your strategies about reading, not just for knowledge, but really for implementation?
Well, first of all, we need to kind of talk about what kind of books we're reading, because obviously that makes a difference. If we're reading another novel, a history novel, you may end up in saying, well, this was a nice read, kind of for relaxation, but there's not much business principles or in it, other than pure pleasure. So when I talk about 52 books that I read a year, these are non-fiction books. So these are books that are written kind of for the development of my mind, body, soul, and spirit, and so obviously I consume more than I can put into action, and for me that's fine. Okay, I want to have more principles in a sense at my disposal than I can put into action, because I only have 24 hours, and I can't do everything that I read about. So first of all, I would say let's not get tripped up. You don't need to put everything into action that you read about, but obviously, you want to. You want to put things to action. Now, here's the interesting thing that I'm discovering. Sometimes I start adopting new behaviors because something just gets ingrained into my subconscious. So there's some things consciously that we take in, but there's also, if you put yourself in with good literature, let's say for self-development. Okay, there's a whole bookshelf in bookshops on self-development, and I've read lots of that over the years. That you just it's almost like a programming of your psyche, how to think. For example, I was having a conversation. When was it? A month ago, with someone about the topic of fear. And I literally said something that later on I needed to kind of reflect on. I said I I fear is not a category that I have in my life. Fear is. I don't know if there's anything I fear. This is not something I think about. And afterwards, I kind of reflected on that. Chris, are you a person without fear? I mean, that sounds kind of a bit strange, or perhaps even arrogant. And when I reflected on it, I pretty much came to the conclusion that that I have programmed my mind over the years with positive attitude, positive self-development, and I credit a lot of that to kind of the taking in of information and literature and good books. That I would say that yes, this is not a category that is present in my life. Now, I'm not saying that there's never ever moments that I'm fearful. If you're raising 3 boys, there are some things that can put the fear of God in you. but I think you can condition your mind, and so perhaps that's one of the things that I want to say is if you whatever your area where you want to develop yourself, you can do a lot of reading on that, and you can in a sense program yourself. Philip, you sent me ChatGPT programmed on my book, but I didn't even know that this was possible. But basically, what you did, you put a ChatGPT, you loaded my book into ChatGPT so that if I ask a question to ChatGPT, it answers kind of in the style of my book. Well, in a sense, you can program a computer with certain knowledge, and I would say today is that you can also program yourself and your mind with certain thoughts. And now, if you don't have any external thoughts coming into your mind, how are you going to do that? And so one of the best ways on how to do that is by reading good literature. It's in a sense like programming yourself. So this is how I look at books.
Well, yeah, and I would agree. I still think there's a danger in just reading for the sake of reading. If we really understand what is our intention behind this, so it's not just a passive. So that you mentioned a passive byproduct of reading is conditioning our mind, and I totally believe that is the case. But there's a difference, I think, like when I look at world-class athletes, for example, they train. So the question is not just about, gaining more knowledge, it's how can I train myself? And so sometimes I realize that I maybe am needing to grow in one certain area of, let's say, business. Let's say in marketing or in sales. And then all of a sudden, I can make a trainings plan that outlines, okay, these are the programs, these are the books, these are the audio tapes, the workshops that I attend to make sure that my training will end up in the marathon, so I can survive the marathon, figuratively speaking, in business. It could be the subject of leadership that I said, you know what, for the first time now, I have a team of 20 people. How do I lead? And all of a sudden, our reading, and that's what I would just encourage, myself, because I found myself in that trap where I would read. I kind of doubled down at a few years to actually read 2 books a week. And I realized at some point, yes, I'm reading all these books, but I'm not learning as much as I should. And so really reflecting, also rereading certain books every year. I'm right now rereading a book I've read 3 years ago, where I feel like I want to go deeper as well, and not just broader. So it's under the category of how do we grow, how do we develop. It really is like books is one aspect that needs to be part of the training program, but seeing it as a training program that we want to actually accomplish for a specific goal, to either run the marathon or lose weight or whatever the goal is, all of a sudden then the whole training program can help us lead into that.
Well, let me talk about one specific area that we've discussed as part of the management committee. One of the areas is sales for business owner. I mean, every business owner thinks through, how do I, sell more of my products? How do I sell more of my services? And I would encourage to read some books on sales. And I'm often astonished, even on guys who've got MBAs, and we've got guys who've got MBAs from Harvard here as part of the community, is yes, they've got some, you know, theoretical background on kind of the history of you know, how this all came about, but they've never read books on how to actually do sales. So and we know a business lives and dies by sales it makes, and you know, and we've actually, you know, trained people on good sales. I've read, I don't know, perhaps 100 books on sales. And so, you know, in a sense, I'm an expert because of that. No, this is so funny because, you know, I never took a university course on sales, but I've trained myself because I know I can't be in business without sales. So I've read, like, yeah, as I said, probably 100 books over the course of my life on this topic of sales and, you know, slash marketing, and so, you know, I can have a lot of very decent conversations and even help people on this topic, even though I never took it at university. I studied law. In law, there's no sales program, but so I needed to self-educate, and so one of the things that I, you know, that I just firmly believe in is that our education doesn't end with our university degree. So this is one of the saddest things that I've seen, is that people go for a bachelor's degree, they go for a master's degree, and then they're basically done with learning, and then, you know, they just repeat, you know, for the next 30 or 40 years of their business life, they just repeat what they've learned there, and that's just terrible. You know, our world is changing. You know, economy is changing. So we need to also update our knowledge on how to run stuff, and we can only do that by getting new information. So and that's why reading is just is a good discipline.
Well, especially as business owners, we know that we have to be generally general. The English word is
Educated.
not educated. Generalisten in German.
Generalists, yeah.
Generalists, because we need to understand. Even if we hire things out, we need to know
Enough.
exactly. You know, in the sense, like, what is the other person doing? Otherwise, we are dependent on the other person. So we at least have to have the knowledge, the general knowledge, to kind of give direction. I remember the first time first business, I hired a web designer, you know, back in the day, and that was the day where it was still difficult to kind of know how to do websites, and it was the worst experience because I did not know anything about it, and I said, I promised myself, for some things that are critical, we need to know, even if we have a team, even if we delegate it. So I have focus subjects for the year. So I have 2 subjects that I study every year. So this year, one of the subjects is AI. I want to know what is happening, because it will change the world. It will change our businesses. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, maybe not in 3 years. But if we don't know, and if we can't be a step ahead, it's a problem. Now, at the same time, I feel like if we really are struggling in an area in business, if we start to read and learn to solve that problem, our reading and learning will be through the roof, because it is tied to application. And so our mind also has a totally different way of actually then solving solutions.
So I like the way you frame it. And Philip, I know that, you know, because we've had lots of discussions around that. For us, books are in a sense a strategy to achieve a goal. And I don't know if everyone kind of looks at books like that, because, you know, for some of our books is kind of what they put in front of us when we were teenagers. You know, we had to read Shakespeare, we had to read Goethe, you know, and it was a painful exercise. You know, you shared a part of your story. I remember, you know, some books that I had to read in high school that you know, that was a torment. You know, they should have paid me to do that because it was just terrible. But the way we as business guys look at books is they are strategies to achieve something that we want to get done. And this can be in any and all areas of lives. So, you know, we can talk about a different subject like marriage. Okay, now everyone knows, like, the way you develop your marriage is very critical to your life. You know, if happy wife, happy life. No happy wife, no happy life. And so so the question is, well, you know, how do you learn about marriage? Well, you know, yes, from your parents.
Like
and,
going
from,
through three marriages.
Oh yeah, you go through 3 marriages. That's how you. Well, that's. But how about reading a book on marriage? I mean, there's some books that are written out of it. Now, I would say I'm definitely not an expert on marriage, but I've actually read a few books on marriage, and it has actually helped me. So you can even choose, some topics that also perhaps are not so comfortable. In fact, I felt like they were quite uncomfortable when I read about marriage. I'm like, man, I'm the worst husband that has ever lived because I'm doing everything wrong, not according to the book. But I learned something. So it's like choose some areas also where you do want to do self-development, where you want to improve, and where you need to shape up, and marriage makes a big difference.
Well, one of the key revelations that I had is when I reflected on doing my yearly reflection of the last year. I realized that one gift, that I in the moments that were really difficult that I had was that I had always enough hope to get me going through that valley. And so hope is a currency that is unbelievable, but it often came through books or through things I was learning. So in the midst of the most difficult time, what kept me going was actually the hope I got through books that there is a better way, that there is a way out, that there is a better future. And so, especially if you are in a time where you are struggling and where things are just not as exciting, and you feel there is no momentum maybe in your business or in your marriage, through reading you actually can infuse hope that can actually make sure that you go the extra mile or the next mile, and sometimes just suffering through a period, even if you don't change anything, will actually take help you, and books and kind of feeding yourself, programming your mind, that there is a brighter future ahead, has been the biggest gift that books actually, that we normally not talk about, has given to my life through the years.
One of my favorite categories of books is biographies. So I just love reading biographies. I mean, in fact, that's how I discovered also the life of Cosimo de' Medici. I was just very interested to learn more about this business guy from the 14th, 15th century, about how did he develop his life. And I've always, in a sense, it's funny, but how our mind works. But I love to read about how things go bad in people's life. It's like, you read.
There's a category for that, yes.
Yeah, there is, because I'm actually not just interested in kind of all the the great things that are being achieved, but I want to hear about the low points. I want to hear about what was difficult and what didn't work out, and that's why I love biographies, because they kind of tell the longer story. Not all of them, but lots of them are really good. So one of my fun biographies that probably the book that I've given away the most is by Richard Branson, Losing My Virginity. And if you want to hear how he lost his virginity, you read the book. But it's actually a fascinating biography on how he built the Virgin brand, and he's a billionaire. And I've given that book away because I just always found it incredibly interesting on just how he messed it up and how he built it up, and so that is talking about hope. Yes, we need hope. We need hope. And sometimes the stories of other people going through a similar process. Another biography that comes to my mind is from Arnold Schwarzenegger, Total Recall. It's one of the best biographies written because it tells the story of a bodybuilder from Austria going to America and building a career and becoming successful, in bodybuilding, then as acting, and then even in politics. And it's a fascinating read. There's so much stuff you can take out of that.
Yeah. Well, I hope you kind of at least got a little more desire to read, even if you feel like reading is not your thing. Coming from a dyslexic, saying make it your thing, because there's a whole world that opens up. But don't just read, also kind of see how you can apply it. Now you can start by just going to medicibook.com and get Chris' book, Get Your House in Order, which is kind of really focusing on Cosimo de' Medici, his legacy, and how he set up his life, got his house in order in the different categories. So it's not just about business success, it's about life success and family success. A great book. You can get it for free actually on Medici. MediciBook.com. And thanks for watching or hearing. You can always watch the video on YouTube or listen to the audio, subscribe wherever you want. But we are thankful you're part of this journey of getting your house in order. And it really comes from us out of a place of not just saying we got our house in order. It's through these discussions and being intentional and reflecting. We are all in the process of getting our house in order. So I'm excited to hear or see you in the next episode.